This video took me 3 months to film, and not for the reasons that you might think. When I started Project Zero in January, I had a very clear plan. I was only going to use money that I got from selling my old clothes to fund any new purchases. But then, life happened. We were talking new job, new pressures, and an unexpected wave of imposter syndrome. So here's the big question. Did they fail the challenge, or did they just evolve it? Let's talk about it. If you haven't watched my New Year's resolutions video or the original Project Zero explanation, the reason why I started it was mainly financial. I'm turning 30 this year and I finally want to start saving for my own home. I also already own a lot of clothes that I like, so the idea was to mostly wear the clothes that I already have and prevent any unnecessary shopping and spending. So it was a good plan, but what I didn't anticipate was life. So to help you really understand what happened in January, February, I really want to take you back to December so you have a little bit of context of where I was actually coming from. So when I launched Project Zero, I was in a very uncertain place. The company that I was working for had just announced massive layoffs in December, and my role was almost made redundant. So even though I still had my job in December, early January, I felt extremely uncertain. And so that fear of losing my income had really hit me hard. And so, of course, I started to do the practical things like applying for new jobs, going for interviews. But at the back of my head, I was always trying to think of what can I actually do to create a little bit more certainty in my finances coming into 2025. And so this is, I think, where Project Zero was actually born, a little bit from that fear of losing my money and not having enough. And so I feel at that point, it seemed like a pretty reasonable thing to try to do. So I started, and in the first 2 weeks of January, I was really focused on just like holding it all together, going for an interview, and I was not really thinking about shopping at all. Then the weather got absolutely freezing. It snowed for a couple of days. It was really cold. So I realized that I don't actually have a pair of gloves, and I found a pair for £5 in a charity shop. And that was the very first purchase that I made this year. So shortly after, I realized that I have got the job, which made me really, really happy. But it also led to a lot of overwhelm because I had to hand in my notice, deal with all of the emotions of leaving a company I had been working for about 3.5 years, leaving my colleagues and starting something new. And I basically transitioned into the new role with literally no break. So it's basically, I finished on a Friday and I started the new role on a Monday. And I think that piled on the waves of stress that I had been feeling the entire month of January. And so even though I bought a couple of things that you've seen already on the channel, like the faux leather shorts, the blouse, and the pink blazer, I was still sticking to my Project Zero rules because I had made more money in sales than I spent. And so I ended up the month pretty much on a high, feeling really good about it. But I would say that February is when things got complicated. So my job requires me to be in office 2 times a week, which might not seem like a lot to some people, but it was actually a really big change for me because in the past 3.5 years, I had been working pretty much exclusively from home. And so that small shift in my work environment triggered something quite big in me. And so even though the dress code is actually quite casual, you can wear whatever you want, I realized that I need to really step up how I'm showing up and how I'm dressing in order to feel myself being confident among the other people. And that is because the role that I have right now, I'm basically leading sessions, coaching people, coaching leaders, and teaching different concepts. And a lot of the time, I'm working with people that are 1, 2, 3 decades older than me. And so I realized that with the outfits that I would usually wear, I felt great, but I didn't necessarily feel they expressed that level of professionalism and capability that I wanted to convey. And so it was less about being maybe superficial and like looking the part and faking it till you make it, but it was more about finding who I was in this new environment and how can I express a part of myself that maybe I hadn't really needed to express in the past couple of years. And so after the first week of work, when you can imagine it's a lot of new things, new people, it's quite overwhelming, I decided that I wanted to go shopping just for a little bit. And so I bought a few new things. The first one, and that is something that I feel really, really good about, is actually my Sandro trench coat, which you have already seen on the channel if you've watched my previous couple of videos. And this is something that I had been eyeing for about 3 years. I tried the beige version for the first time about 3 years ago, and even though I really liked it, at that point I wasn't even sure about my colors, but I didn't really like beige all that much, so I was like, something's a little bit off. But besides that, it was also full price, and at that point I was like, I'm not paying that amount of money for a coat. However, this time the coat was actually on a 50% off sale. It had showed up in the black and white print, which made it a lot more interesting and a better fit for me. And it was also in my right size. And for the past couple of years, every time I would wear a midi dress, a midi skirt, anything that's a little bit longer, I wanted to have a coat that actually fully covers it. And all of my coats stop kind of mid-calf, so they don't do this job fully and kind of cut me off. And so I really wanted something that is just that little bit longer. And so this coat actually made the perfect companion to fit a slightly different need, but it was also something that I've wanted for a while. And so it was definitely a splurge in terms of how much I spent on it, but it was also, I would say, a considered purchase and something that I know doesn't really lose its value because I've seen this coat resell for pretty much the price that I bought it for. Now, the problem was that at the point of buying this coat, I did not have enough money in my Project Zero pot. And so making that decision to buy the coat put me a little bit into that mindset of, oh, well, I've already broken the rules, so I might as well just keep going. And this is a really dangerous mindset. And the problem was that I saw it happening in real time. So I noticed myself in the next couple of weeks just going to charity shops a lot more to just browse. And of course, I wouldn't be buying tons and tons of stuff like I would have in the past. But at the same time, I still bought a couple of things that I wouldn't necessarily say I needed. I also noticed myself at night scrolling on Vinted and almost having this inability to stop. And even though none of the purchases that I made were particularly expensive, I noticed that at the end of the month when I was doing my Excel spreadsheet, the final amount was quite scary because it was nearing the £600. And of course, a big part of that was the coat, but those £5 and £10 purchases have actually started to add up to quite a shocking amount. And looking back, I definitely think that I was dealing with a lot of pressure. I think part of it was self-imposed and part of it is, of course, the pressure of starting a new job and wanting to make a good impression, getting to know the rules, getting to know the people, what you actually have to do. And if you've ever changed jobs or moved cities or you've had this sort of change in your circumstances, in your environment, you know how stressful that is. And so I want to extend myself a little bit of that compassion and just say, hey, like, it's actually normal that I found a way to deal with the stress that maybe wasn't the most productive. But something that truly surprised me was both the lack and the presence of imposter syndrome. Because you know how people talk about when you start a new job, it's very normal to have imposter syndrome, whether you can do this and do that. And the weird thing is that because the role is actually very similar to what I had been doing for the past couple of years, I don't think I necessarily had imposter syndrome around delivering the sessions and helping people and this and that. So not so much about the job itself, but it was much more about me in the context of the big company and the big organization. And it was, I would say, not around skills, but it was around presence. Because I realized that for me, clothes need to make the desired impression for me to feel fully supported. And so this is very much, if you're familiar with the style keys, that is the left up logic. So the clothes need to be an expression of yourself, but also make the desired impression on other people. And I realized quite early on that my everyday outfits that I was really used to wearing for the past couple of years perhaps wouldn't make the desired impression. No one would say anything, but I didn't feel like they would express the capable professional that I consider myself to be. And so I had to find items that felt both professional, but also like they're part of me, they express something about me. And if you've ever tried to dress for work, you know that it's not always the easiest balance to hit. So in February and then in March, I actually made a couple of purchases that were very much expanding or updating my workwear wardrobe. And I have to say that pretty much everything that I had bought with the purpose to expand my work wardrobe has been an absolute success. So all of the things that I bought, I've been wearing them and I've been feeling amazing, and like they're both really comfortable and express a part of me, but at the same time, they're creating that impression of someone that knows what they're doing. And so in my next video on Sunday, I'm going to show you everything I bought and sort of rate it on a couple of different scales to see how useful or intentional it actually has been. But I would say that the black and white floral blouse and the denim trousers, leggings, however you want to call them, were actually really good purchases that have absolutely allowed me to both feel like myself, but also create a bit more of that professional front. And so I would say that maybe kind of late February, early March was that time that I started to transition from very stressed Millie into, okay, I'm allowed to make some purchases because my lifestyle has changed, but they need to be a little bit more thought out, more considered, and a little bit more intentional. So in March, I traveled twice for work, going to London and then all the way down south, met different colleagues, supported in different sessions, participated in meetings, and I started to get a little bit of a better feel for how things work, who are the people we work with, what's expected of me in certain ways, and slowly but surely started to create that work wardrobe that supports me, but also expresses the things about me that I really care about. And so I made a couple of more purchases, but the focus was really, does this fit my lifestyle in terms of the fact that I now commute, I go to the office, I have to maybe present in front of people, does this fit that? Is it comfortable but also polished? And also, does it express something about me? Do I like this piece? Am I excited to wear it? Because the last thing I would want to do is to just wear some boring corporate clothes just because I feel like I have to. That was completely not the point. And so some of my best purchases during that time came from charity shops, a couple of vintage finds, and even that blouse that I showed you is from Tesco's. And I never would expected to find something really nice in Tesco, but they have definitely upped their fashion game. I would say that this is the month also where I returned a lot of purchases. So one thing that I'm very proud of myself is that in the past, I would take the tags off and just try to wear something before I've actually considered if I truly like that purchase and if it's truly aligned. And I no longer do that. So I kept a lot of my purchases with the tags on, and maybe I would try to wear them for an hour at home and just see how I feel. And I realized that there were a couple of pieces that I didn't really like on me when I had them for a little bit longer, but also some of the pieces that I had bought were complete duplicates of things that I already had but were stored away. And yes, I do have index and I could have checked, do I have this, do I have that? But at the same time, I feel like when you're in this mindset of buy and like you're shopping from more of a stress response rather than anything else, that sort of rationality goes a little bit out of the way. And so I bought 2 pairs of jeans that I returned because I realized that, hey, I actually have something very similar already in my wardrobe. And I'm so happy that I have finally changed into my spring capsule, and I'll be making another video about that. But it really helped me to start loving the clothes that I already had, and also put together the new additions that I have added into my wardrobe and incorporating them into one capsule that feels really appropriate for the moment. So we got to the end of March, and I started to think about filming this video and what am I actually going to do. At one point, I did feel quite guilty about breaking my own rules and perhaps disappointing all of you that were looking forward to this video. And so one of the options that I considered was going on this very strict no buy. So basically, because right now I have spent more money than I have made with my sales, then I would just continue to sell until I break even, and only then buy anything else. Now, this sounds like a good plan and a very reasonable option, but I realized that I had absolutely no control over when things actually sell. So of course, what's for me is to put the items for sale on Vinted or eBay to list them. But I've had items sell in about a day, and I've had items sit for over a year before they finally sell. And so even though I could do all of the work to put all of the items for sale, I had no guarantee when I would actually have money to buy something, and it felt very restrictive and not flexible or reflective of my current needs. So the second option that I considered was to adjust the challenge in some way that still holds me accountable, but also reflects my current reality. And so here is what I've decided. I'm going to continue to track all the money that I am spending and all of the clothes that I am selling. But I'm also going to allow myself to use my YouTube AdSense revenue from this channel to support my Project Zero. Because the reality is that this channel is actually pushing my style to evolve. I've never bought anything purely for content, and that is not the plan that I have. But at the same time, I feel because I'm exploring different style systems, I'm exposing myself to a lot of different images and styles, I'm naturally quite curious to maybe expand and experiment and refine my style even more. And so the channel existing is definitely influencing my style evolution. And so it felt more honest and fair to actually use the income that I made from this YouTube channel to support Project Zero. And this video is not a confession. I think it's much more of a reflection of what happens when life changes. And whether you start a new job like me, you move to a different climate, a different place, or maybe your lifestyle changes because you become a parent or something else actually shifts. I feel that oftentimes we try to stick to our old plans and our old rules that maybe came from a really well-intentioned place and were perfectly appropriate for the life that we led at that point. But if we evolve our life, but we don't evolve the plan, it then becomes a mismatched way to try and keep ourselves accountable. And it almost feels like a punishment rather than something that is meant to support your growth and evolution. And so, yes, I did not follow Project Zero perfectly, but I also didn't quit. And I'm very proud of myself for that, because I know that in the past, I would have completely said, that's it, I'm not doing this anymore. What I have done now is adjusted the rules to make it more realistic and more me. And I would say that that is a win. So if you've watched until the end, thank you so much for being here and for holding space for me to be honest in the messy middle. If you're doing a no buy or a low buy or just trying to shop more intentionally, please let me know below in the comments how it is going for you. And I just want to remind you that we're not here to be perfect, we're here to grow. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.